Investment planning is not just about envisioning your future. It's getting the right expertise to do so. At Volition Cap, we'll help you create a 5-year plan for financial freedom. So go ahead, secure your future by consulting an expert. Book an investment planning session today. Volition Cap, democratizing wealth. My name is Shubomi Plumter, and I'm a director at Volition Capital Investments Limited. About 10 years into my career journey, I discovered that I would be poor if I ever stopped working. My salaries weren't going to make me rich, but it was what I did with those salaries by way of investment that would determine the kind of lifestyle that I lived, thereafter. So in about a 1-year period, I went on an active journey to learn about investing. So what I've done with this course is to put together my entire body of investment knowledge into an easy to follow format. So you're going to watch videos that talk about each of the different investment platforms that I've experientially tried. Please take your time and learn about the course.
Hello, my name is Edith Effiong. I'm an entrepreneur in technology, advertising, and film. You may have seen me on CNN as the director of Nollywood's biggest film yet, The Black Book. To make The Black Book, we had a chicken and egg problem. We had to make a film that was big, profitable, so that investors be attracted to it. And of course, we needed investors who would invest in this film that we're going to make. It was a chicken and egg problem. Volition made that easy for us by bridging the gap between the chicken and the egg in what we pitched as the most ambitious film projects ever done in Nigeria. Volition came through when we needed them most, which is why they are already on our cap table for our next slate of projects. They understand the industry needs and flow in a way that ensures that not only art is created, but investor interests are protected. Volition's conviction in investing in the creative industries match our ambition of telling the next generation of African stories. That's why we are together marching into the future.
Unleash collective prosperity. Are you weary of investing in solitude? Do you yearn for the vibrant synergy of a community of like minds? Then look no further. In our investment family, we'll teach you about education endowments for your beloved children. We'll discuss seed funding for business or relocation. We'll also explain the path to early retirement and financial freedom. Secure your place in our community today. Vizient Group. Create purposeful wealth.
Yeah, that was in 2018 through my colleague at Transocean. I said I should give it a trial. And it came out to be worth the while at the end of the day. There are risks on everything. So it was part of my portfolio risk management objectives. I can say the main movers of this Vincent Cooperative, they are trusted people. They are unlike the average Nigerian you see on the street. Their word is their bond, and that kept me going, and that's why I hold them with the highest esteem. The way they have also chosen their team, and they have a lot of corporate governance principles behind them. In some cases, the executives went ahead to make sure that they chased those bad elements, and we have seen several examples work out well, and that gives one some courage and some hope. For me, I liked the red pool. That was very safe. Part of what I liked also is the fact that they have things for various risk appetites. So if you are somebody who doesn't want to take a lot of risk, you have where you go. I can trust Vincent Cooperative, and that makes me attracted to them.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are joining from. It's such a pleasure to have you all join us for this exciting investment webinar. Whether you are an experienced investor or someone just beginning your financial journey, we are thrilled to have you here with us. Please note that this session is being recorded for future references. Today, we will be exploring the topic, dollar investment in Nigeria, frustrations and challenges. No doubt, dollar investments have become increasingly attractive to Nigerians with the continued devaluation of the Naira. However, the process is riddled with challenges that can leave seasoned investors frustrated. During this webinar, we will address these issues head-on, offering practical advice and strategies to help you navigate these hurdles. We will provide answers to some of these questions like, why can't I do dollar transfer between Nigerian banks? Or why can't I transfer cash payments from my domiciliary account? Or maybe questions like, how do I invest in dollar instruments from Nigeria? Our goal is to equip you with actionable knowledge, empowering your decision-making abilities, and helping you invest in opportunities that align with your overall financial goals and aspirations. However, before we proceed, can I request that we all indicate in the chat box the cities or countries you are joining us from? Please feel free to indicate in the chat box. Thank you so much for that. So as we go through the session, feel free to engage, ask questions, share your thoughts, and make the most of this interactive space. Please note that at the beginning of this webinar, we are going to have 3 different polls about your encounter with dollar investment in Nigeria. Remember, this webinar is all about learning and collaboration. Our keynote speaker for today is the CEO of Evolution Cap, Shubomi Plumter. We are honored to have her with us today. She is here to share her expertise and real-world experiences with us. Our insights will guide us in navigating the complexities of today's dollar investment landscape in Nigeria. Let us take the polls for today. The first poll for today will talk about what has been your biggest challenge with dollar transactions in Nigeria. Please, we have 4 options. Kindly take the one that best fits your answers. First is difficulty transferring between banks. That's first option. Second option is high international transfer fees. Third option is restrictions on domiciliary accounts. And the last option is lack of reliable dollar investment options. We have 5 seconds to go. Great. Let's see the result of the poll. Fantastic. Now we can see from the poll that 31% of us lack, the reliable dollar investment options. And 25%, in fact, 25% is in two slots. We have 25% for difficulty transferring between banks. The other 25% is high international transfer fees. And of course, the last percentage of the poll is restrictions on dollar domiciliary accounts. Thank you so much. Let's go straight to the second poll, please. Today's second poll, we are going to be looking at why are you interested in dollar investment? Again, we have 4 options available for your tick. First is to protect against Naira devaluation. Second is to diversify my portfolio. Third is to access global opportunities. And of course, the last one is I'm still figuring out my goals. We have 5 seconds to go. Fantastic. Let's see the result of this poll. Wow. So we can see from the result that, 36% of us, actually are interested in accessing global opportunities. That's fantastic. That's a good, good poll to look at. 31% of us are looking at protecting, against Naira devaluation. And 30% of us are looking at diversifying our portfolio. And of course, the last 3% are looking at figuring out their goals. Let's take the last poll. Fantastic. The last poll is about, do you currently have any dollar investments? Yes, please let us have your opinion. First option is, yes, I already invested in dollar instrument. Second option is, no, I'm actively looking for opportunities. The third one is, no, I'm just exploring more options. 5 seconds more. Great. Let us have the poll results. Fantastic. Yes, it's very interesting to know that almost 50% of us are already invested in dollar instruments, 48% in, to be actual, 35% are actively looking for opportunities. And, those are some of the, highlights we're going to share today. And the last 18% are exploring more, exploring more options or exploring new options as well. Thank you so much for the polls. So, again, today's session, as I said, will be anchored by our keynote speaker, the CEO of Volition Cap, Shubomi Plumpter. It will interest you to know that Shubomi Plumpter is an qualified fund manager. Shubomi champions middle-class prosperity in Africa and the diaspora. She believes this social group is critical to driving economic growth in Africa and designed a fund management model that leverages traditional African cooperatives and remittance investing. Shubomi is a licensed fund manager, as I said, and the chief executive of Volition Cap. With over 20 years of strategy, branding, and marketing communications experience, Shubomi has trained thousands of investing through online courses. A lot of us might probably have had that opportunity. She sits on the board of Opportunity Global Fund, All That Consulting, and Music Business for Africa. She is a published author, Acumen Fellow, Bella Geo resident. Shubomi is also Gates Foundation goalkeeper and a member of adjoint faculty of the University of Lagos. Now, let's welcome our keynote speaker for today, the CEO of Volition Cap, Shubomi Plumpter. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully I'll be able to take a lot of questions today because I think, quite a lot of people came with questions and they're looking for answers. So I'm going to try as much as possible to do a very brief presentation so that we can, really just reserve a lot more time for the Q&A session. So I'm going to share my screen. We just share a couple of thoughts about dollar investments, address some of the challenges out there, and then hopefully take the questions. But please use the Q&A box. Sometimes it gets a bit distracting when we're trying to capture questions in the comments. So instead of asking your questions in the comments, please use the Q&A button instead, and that way we can keep track of every question. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to be talking about why, dollar investments. I think to some extent that's rather obvious to a lot of people. Frustrations and challenges. We'll understand some of the root causes of those challenges. We'll discuss how to invest in dollar instruments from Nigeria, and then what are the available dollar investments in Nigeria. So why dollar investments? For a lot of you, it's really because you're trying to hedge against currency devaluation, and that's the honest truth. Nigeria's currency has been against the dollar. Nigeria's currency has been dropping steadily since I was born. So that's kind of like a consistent pattern that's not likely to change anytime soon. For some of you who have really just looked at a lot of what has been going on in the last 2 years, you'll know that food prices, for example, have tripled and in some cases quadrupled. Transportation prices as well have tripled. Fuel prices, in some cases, have increased 4 times in the last 2 years alone. So really, I don't have very good news for you. And when we get into the Q&A, I'll explain some of the reasons why our currency will probably not make a comeback for the next 20 years. And that's my personal opinion. And we can discuss, some of the research that backs that opinion. So currency devaluation is not going to disappear anytime soon. Inflation is not going to disappear anytime soon. And that's simply because we're a consumption economy, not a producing economy. Let me give you a case in point. I recently traveled to Thailand, and I remember I was sitting at an outdoor restaurant by the beach, and it occurred to me that every single thing on my plate was produced in Thailand. From the shrimps I was eating to the disposable cutlery, the plate, the cup, the table, the toothpick, every single thing was produced. Nothing was imported. Now, if you go to an average restaurant in Nigeria, you know almost nothing is produced, including the steak, the beef that you're eating. You might end up eating steak that is not even produced in Nigeria. It's imported into Nigeria. Nigeria, for example, imports more fish than we produce. Even with our coastal line, the fact that we have an abundance of oceans, we still import more fish than we produce. So inflation is not going to go away anytime soon. For some of you who have tried to earn foreign exchange from Nigeria, you've also realized how difficult that is. We have a government that says they're looking for dollars, and they make it difficult for people to export, and they make it difficult for people to earn forex. So let's leave politics for another day, but these are the issues, So please plan for the next 20 years, because I know a lot of people have this hope that Nigeria is going to change magically. And the truth is, even if we start the process of industrialization today, it's going to take at least 20 years to produce the installed capacity to become a developed nation. So yes, I'm optimistic that the change will start, but even if it starts in my lifetime, there are just certain pieces of infrastructure that cannot be built overnight. So it's your children that are going to see the new Nigeria in its full glory. So devaluation and inflation are things you have to come to terms with. Don't wish them away. And it's not beer parlor conversation. If you talk to any economist and if you talk to any fund manager, they will give you the underlying metrics and the data to support the fact that we're going to be here for quite a while. Dollar investments will give you access to global opportunities. There are things you're going to want to apply for in future. Maybe your kids want to go to Ivy League universities. Maybe you're planning to jackpot and you need to prove, your source of funds or prove, your income level. Maybe you want to start a business, a global business at some point. But a lot of those things are dollar denominated. They're not Naira denominated. So there's certain global opportunities that you need to show proof of funds in another currency that is not Naira. So for some of you, you're here because you're considering global opportunities. It also safeguards savings for the future. So perhaps you're planning for retirement in the next 15 years and you want to retire in a currency that is stable. So you don't need the money now, you're young, you really don't need a lot, but you're thinking, in 15 years, 20 years when I retire, I don't want to have to retire and the value of my savings have been completely reduced because of currency devaluation. So for some of you, that's your concern. So what are the frustrations and challenges if you've ever tried to invest in a dollar instrument in Nigeria? The first thing is you've noticed there's a restriction in dollar transfers between Nigerian banks. The Central Bank of Nigeria calls this dollarization of the economy. So what they're trying to do is to avoid people paying for goods and services using another currency apart from the legal tender, which is Naira. So because of that, CBN is currently restricting. Before, you would have been able to transfer from a GT Bank to a UBA or from a UBA to a Stanbic. Now it's increasingly difficult for you to transfer dollars between Nigerian banks. And even for the banks that currently allow it, I'm not going to name some names, but for the banks that have found a way around it, you pay the offshore fees. So they treat it as if it's an international transfer, even though it's moving from one Nigerian bank to another Nigerian bank. And I'm going to give you the scale of fees that are involved in a typical offshore transaction. So for some of you, you're frustrated because you're like, why can't I just transfer from, my GT Bank to this other, GT Bank that is an investment account? Why do I have to pay as if it's an international transfer? And in some cases, CBN would even block those, transfers. So it's really, really frustrating anytime you're trying to transfer dollars between Nigerian banks. It's a CBN policy against dollarization of the Nigerian economy. And currently, there's no way around it without you treating it as an offshore, an international transaction and paying the associated fees for an offshore transaction. And only if you bank with a Nigerian bank that has found a backdoor or a way around it. And I shall not name those Nigerian banks. There's also the high cost of international transfers. So first of all, you're going to pay your offshore fee. So what I do is that I just add 0.525%. So someone can help me, type that into the chat box. So whatever you want to transfer out of Nigeria or even within Nigeria, because like I said, even transfers from one Nigerian dollar account to another dollar account is treated like an offshore transaction. So just add 0.525%. What that includes is the 0.5% offshore charge. You're also going to pay 7.5% VAT, on top of that charge. So there's 0.5% of the total amount you're trying to transfer, and then 7.5 VAT on the transfer cost itself. Then there's the $25 telex charge, and some other banks add another 25% or $25 rather to that charge. So by the time you round everything up, it usually comes to about 0.525 of the entire sum. So when you see that charge, just note that, it's a charge from the bank, and it's not, maybe any other charge. So anytime you're thinking about doing a dollar transaction from Nigeria, just add your 0.525. The counterparty will always receive less 0.525%. So it means if you need to make that transfer complete, you need to add that when you're doing your transfers. There are also a lot of policy changes that affect Forex availability. So what a lot of people try to do is they call it finding inflows. So you're looking for someone who has received a direct inflow into their account to transfer you that money, so that it's free for you to use anyhow you like. Because if you try to transfer cash, there's a cap. Again, some banks put a cap of $10,000. So it means if you pay in cash into your account on a monthly basis, you can only transfer $10,000 of that cash. So imagine if you wanted to do an investment of $50,000, you're restricted to $10,000 if the money that came into your account is cash. But if it's money that came into your account as an inflow, you can transfer $1 million if you like from Nigeria. There'll be no restriction as long as the original amount came in as inflow. So you have a lot of people searching for inflows all over the place, because they're trying to do a bulk dollar transaction or dollar investment. So have all of these things, because these are, policy restrictions, policy changes, and the bad news is that the changes happen every day. So you can wake up tomorrow and there's something new. That's just take it like that. There's also, I've talked about the limited threshold, so $10,000 if you pay cash into your account. So again, imagine you're trying to do, maybe an investment that's higher than $10,000. It's capped. There's also a lot of documentation that is required. So for some of you, your bank will say, do you have a contract? Do you have an invoice? They're just going to ask you all sorts of things. And then there's the CBN approved list of purpose of transaction. So there's some people who even get stuck at what is the purpose of this transaction. And if you don't have a friendly relationship with your account officer, your account officer may be clueless, may not even know, because a lot of times the guys who really know, what those categories are the guys who work on the FX desk or in treasury. So a lot of times your account officer may be a contract staff. They don't even know what's going on in terms of FX regulation. So a lot of times, the bank keeps rejecting it because they say, oh, this is not on the approved list in terms, of the, purpose of transfer, from the CBN. And you go back and forth, you're trying to figure out, okay, what should I put as the narration? So it's a bit in terms of just, frustrating, trying to do transfers. So the only time you're going to be able to do a dollar transfer between Nigerian banks is if you're sending to a SEC licensed institution. So the CBN allows domestic USD transactions if that transaction is going to a SEC licensed company for investment purposes. So at that point, you are allowed to do a domestic, but again, you still pay your 0.525%, even though it's ostensibly, quote and unquote, a domestic, transfer. But at least you're not going to need a lot of documentation. You're not going to be asked a lot of questions as long as it's going to a SEC licensed institution, because it's seen as an investment. And the CBN allows domestic USD transfers for investment purposes within Nigeria. Now, what are the root causes? Why are these transfers so expensive? I've talked about this. I'm going to skip this. Why are international transfers from Nigeria so expensive? The first thing is correspondent banking fees. Unfortunately, Nigeria has to go through a correspondent bank before they can do offshore transactions. So sadly, you're going to have to pay for all of those charges. So a huge chunk of those fees are actually correspondent banking fees. And then, of course, the Nigerian banks are making their profits on top. So that's the challenge. So you'll find that, for example, if you have a Bank of America account or, a Standard Chartered account or any foreign account, and you're trying to do a transaction, you just get a flat fee, $45. It's a flat fee, and depending on the tier of your account, those fees are even waived. So if you have a private banking account or a premium account, you don't even pay any fees. And that's because these are not banks that they don't require intermediaries. Nigerian banks require intermediaries to interact with the SWIFT network, which is the international network that powers offshore transactions. So because of that, they're going to have to pay correspondent banking fees. So that's one of the reasons why those fees are so expensive. And like I said, these things are not likely to change for the next couple of years. So always add that extra anytime you're doing an international transfer. There are also regulatory costs, for example, the 7.5% VAT, on the fee that you're already being charged. That's a regulatory, cost. There's nothing you can do about that. There's also restricted competition. So unlike, again, if you live outside of Nigeria, you have a lot of apps. There are a lot of fintech companies, payment service providers that facilitate offshore transactions. You have your Western Union, you have your Transfer, your Wise, you have different, platforms, World Remit, Remitly. They're all of these apps, that you can use for cheaper international transactions. But unfortunately, in Nigeria, using those apps means that the money is going to come in Naira. So if you've tried to do a remittance recently, you'll find that a lot of the remittance apps no longer settle in dollars. So even though you initiate in dollars or initiate in pounds, you get Naira in Nigeria. Again, that is a regulatory issue. So these are just some of the things that you're going to deal with, in terms of just trying to do international transactions, whether from Nigeria or to Nigeria. Now, in view of all of this, how do you invest in dollar instruments from Nigeria? The first thing is open a local domiciliary account and prepare for your 0.525%. That's the simplest way. So if you have a local dollar or pound or euro domiciliary account, then it's relatively easy to do investments in dollar instruments, and you find one of those banks who allows you to do maybe from local bank to local bank. I can't name those banks, but I'm sure if you do your search, you will find them. So open a local domiciliary account and just mentally prepare that anytime you're going to transfer funds, just add your 0.525%. The second option is purchase dollar-denominated assets with Naira. There are quite a lot of companies now that allow you to invest in dollar funds with the Naira equivalent, and then on maturity, you get dollars. So temporarily, you might, if maybe you don't have a domiciliary account yet, but you want to invest immediately, you can start with Naira, and then by the time you've set up your domiciliary account, when it's time to receive your investment returns, your domiciliary account will be ready, and then you can get paid in dollars. So that's also another option for you. If you earn in dollars, you're a tech bro, you're an oil and gas babe, you currently invest in dollars, please open an offshore account. Nigeria should not be your only account, I beg you. I'm not demarketing Nigeria. I'm not Davido, but please, your Nigerian account should ideally not be your only account if you earn in dollars. So you're eligible for an offshore account if you earn in dollars. So that might be another option for you. As long as you can prove your source of funds, you earn have a contract or you have a job, that pays you in dollars, and you can prove, where that money is coming from, you're eligible, for an offshore account. But above all, use trusted platforms. Some people use, BDCs, Bureau de Change, to get inflows and all of that. And some people have lost their money in the process. So make sure whatever platform you're using is a trusted platform. If you're trying to get inflows, use a proper license intermediary, someone who has their license to lose, not a random, guy on the streets, use a trusted and registered platform so that if anything goes wrong, you can report that platform to the regulatory authorities. So it has to be a platform that has a license to lose. Okay. If you earn in dollars, like I said, you can open an offshore account. The steps are very simple. And for some of you, it could just be maybe a country you travel to regularly, and because of your travel history, you're eligible to open a foreign bank account in that country. A lot of times, all you need is a tax ID, and most countries will allow you to register for a tax ID, even if you're not resident in that country. They just need to be able to track what you're using your account for. So if you earn in Forex, you can open, an offshore account, either in an offshore location, or it could just be a regular country, foreign country that you travel to regularly. It helps if you already have a premium account with a Nigerian bank, because your Nigerian account officer can facilitate an introduction to a foreign bank. So if you have a good history, banking history with a Nigerian bank, that Nigerian bank can actually give you a letter of reference and introduce you to an international bank, so that fast tracks your due diligence. You'll be asked to submit necessary documentation, typically your resume, your proof of income, your source of funds, so bank statements, your job contract, or if you're an entrepreneur, it could be contracts with companies that you work with. It could be your audited accounts, your management accounts. Really, if your source of funds is clean, you should have all of those documents, so it won't be a problem. It might just be a bit tedious because you're going to be filling a lot of forms, but if you have all of these pieces of information, it shouldn't really be a problem. It might take you about 3 months to run through the due diligence process, but eventually you would be able to open the accounts. Very important, advise the bank that you're going to be receiving investment inflows. So they will also want to know, what are you using the account for? And they don't want to just be seeing suspicious random amounts coming into your account. So advise them upfront that, oh, you have an investment with this company or with that company, and they're going to be paying your dividends or your returns, and just show them the proof of your investment. So that way the bank already knows upfront that that account is going to be receiving investment inflows. You can also provide investment statements, just verifying that, okay, this is the source of funds, and this is the company that is going to be paying your investment dividends or returns into the account. So that's very important. Because unfortunately, Nigeria is currently on the FATF gray list, and we're on that list because we're accused of not being stringent about money laundering, control of financial, terrorism and financing of terrorism and all of that. So unfortunately, until we get off that list, once you're a Nigerian, you're a suspect until proven innocent. So there's a enhanced due diligence. Some of you may have experienced this, that you're trying to receive an inflow and the correspondent bank flags it, and it's held by the correspondent bank for a few days, and they ask you to prove the source of those funds. That never used to happen before, but now in Nigeria it's happening. That someone sends you inflows or sends you money from abroad, and the correspondent bank withholds that money. Because remember, I said Nigeria always has to go through a correspondent bank. So there's a lot of enhanced due diligence right now. So any money that is coming into your account, please always have your relevant documentation just in case. So what are the available dollar investments in Nigeria? Just to round up, and then we'll take questions. I hope you've been putting your questions in the Q&A box. So what are the available dollar investments in Nigeria? There are quite a lot. And, I kind of wonder why a lot more people don't invest in dollar instruments in Nigeria. I guess it's because of all of these challenges. By the time you think about, how am I going to get inflows, transferring from, bank, getting, relevant documentation, you just get tired because you're like, wow, there's just a lot. But if you can persevere, and get it done, because really a lot of those challenges are psychological. If you have your documentation, you will eventually overcome a lot of all these challenges. So it's not really a challenge, it's just a hurdle. It's just that a lot of people don't like stress. But unfortunately, if you want to make money, you need to accept a certain level of stress. And that's just the truth. So what dollar investments are available in Nigeria? They're dollar-denominated bonds. Almost every asset management company has a dollar bond. Most of them are principal guaranteed. And right now, you're going to get between 7 to 10% on dollar bonds. So if you're lazy, you don't want to do anything, you just want to keep your money somewhere and get a predictable, return at the end of every year, then just go for a plain vanilla dollar bond. And like I said, any asset management company in Nigeria currently, provides dollar bonds. The minimum investment for quite a lot of the bond, about $500 or thereabouts. Some take $100, but it's pretty straightforward and you don't have to think about it. There are also Euro bonds that give higher returns, but they're very long term. So sometimes you may get a Euro bond that matures in 2037. But the good news is that they give biannual, coupon payments. So you're going to get something twice a year in terms of, a return. And then the yield to maturity typically comes about 15 to 20%, especially if you reinvest your coupons. So you give your fund manager the instruction that, instead of paying out your coupons, you just want to be rolling it over, year to year. I don't advise that for a long-term instrument. What if that country defaults on its debt? So I usually collect my coupons. So that's, that's just free advice. But they do give attractive returns. So that might be an option, but the minimum entry is typically high. So you'll find that a lot of asset management companies will say the minimum entry, $50,000, $100,000. So these are instruments a lot of times for high net worth individuals. So they are out of reach of the average investor. Stocks are high risk. If anybody tells you any different, they're lying. They're high-risk investments. Typically, what I advise if you want to invest in stocks is go for the blue chip stocks. So the companies that are going to be around for the next 20 years, they have track record. So these are the blue chip stocks. And I also advise sit down with your stockbroker first and ask their opinion that you should recommend a list of 10 to 20 stocks based on their professional experience, because they have research teams, they do due diligence on some of these companies before they make their expert recommendations. So you can sit down with your stockbroker and say, you're interested in holding 10 to 20 stocks long term, you want blue chip stocks, can they recommend? And most professional stockbrokers will be able to give you a recommendation. But again, you take full responsibility for that decision and for that opinion. Exchange traded funds, these are just baskets. So for example, if you buy an artificial intelligence ETF, it will be made up of maybe the top 50 artificial intelligence companies on the US stock exchange. If you buy, say, a healthcare ETF, it will be made up of top 50 healthcare companies on the New York Stock Exchange. So typically they're just baskets of stocks that are made up of individual stocks, but an asset management company has put them in a basket. So instead of you investing in individual stocks, why don't you just spread your risk by investing in a basket that has already been pre-populated by a licensed fund manager. So that's why ETFs are considered medium risk, because someone has done the hard work of picking the individual stocks, putting all of them in a basket, and you're buying the basket as opposed to buying the individual stocks. We also have cryptocurrency ETFs now that are fully licensed in the US by the US SEC. So we have Bitcoin ETFs, we have Ethereum ETFs now that are managed by licensed fund managers. So I typically would tell people, if you're interested in exposure to cryptocurrencies, instead of buying the individual cryptocurrencies, if you're not a day trader, you have no business buying individual stocks or individual cryptocurrencies, because day traders, that's their job. That's what they do for a living. You're probably not a professional investor. So why don't you just buy ETFs that have already been pre-picked by licensed fund managers? That reduces your risk. There are also fixed income investments. So you find investments that say, oh, for a 12-month period, this is the predictable return every year. And again, fixed income instruments are also expertly managed, because they're at the back end, they're very dynamic and they're actively managed, but at the front end, what you see is 1 year, 12%, or 3 years, 15%. That's the front end, so it's very simple for you. You don't have to think about it, but at the back end, it's actually very dynamically managed by the fund manager. So these are the types of dollar investments and they're all available in Nigeria. You can buy US stocks from Nigeria. I'm sure a lot of you know the apps that would help you buy US stocks or US ETFs from Nigeria. You can buy Euro bonds from Nigeria. Any asset management company would sell you Euro bonds. Any asset management company will sell you dollar-denominated bonds. Any asset management company will sell you fixed income investments. All of these investments are already available in Nigeria. And sometimes I think it's just you going into your asset management company and having a conversation to say, I want to know about all of these. What products do you have? And please be careful. Don't talk to the customer care. Like I said, customer care guys are not investors. They're not fund managers. Stop talking to customer care. Ask to speak to a licensed fund manager when you go to your asset management company. And unless the person confirms they're a licensed fund manager, take everything they're saying with a pinch of salt. So that's another piece of free advice that I would give you. We have some fixed income instruments as well. So if you go to our community website, we have an investment community called Vizient Cooperative. And we've also tried to make investments easy. Our secret sauce is that by pooling all the investments into one institutional fund, we're able to get individuals higher than average rates. So typically you won't find rates that are higher than ours in the market. And that's because we have a SEC license and we also pool the funds into an institution before we invest. So typically we will always meet the minimum for a Euro bond. So if a Euro bond, the minimum entry is $250,000, our investment community will always qualify. And that's because we're pooling all the funds together to make that minimum. So that's why we always provide higher than average rates. It's simply just economies of scale. There's no magic, to it. And because we also have a SEC license, so we're able to negotiate a lot of rates at the primary market on behalf of our investment community. So that's really the secret behind our fund. So we have a lot of fixed income funds that you can invest in. So depending on what your appetite is, whether it's stocks, ETFs, Euro bonds, will just put you in the right buckets. And you can read more at vizientgroup.com. So that's really what we offer. So at this point, I'm going to just take questions. I'll stop sharing, and Yomi, please tell me the questions that I need to answer. And I think some people, I don't know if some people want to ask live questions. This is your show.
All right. Thank you so much, Shibumi Plumter. Your insight into this has been quite great. And I can see at the Q&A box that we have 8 questions already. At the same time, I also noticed some people are dropping their questions at the chat box. I would recommend that please kindly drop your questions in the Q&A box. It's better that way for us to track and be able to answer those questions. So at the moment, we have 10 questions. I'm just going to quickly go through them. The first questions I'm going to be taking is from Stephen Ogaji. And he says, now that the dollar seems to be crashing against pounds and some other currencies, and some countries are bent on making it redundant, what do you think is the future of dollar investment?
Dollar investments are here to stay. So don't believe a lot of all those reports. I'm sure you saw Trump shots fired when he threatened, African governments and BRIC nations, who want to make the dollar redundant. And that's because the dollar, there's a lot that goes into the dollar being the preferred currency. And, again, you're going to have to talk to an economist. Balance of trade, the innovation and manufacturing capacity of the US. Like, there's just a lot that goes into the US currency being the preferred. The fact that it's easily tradable on global global currency exchanges and things like that. So it's replacing, like I said, there's some things that are not going to happen in your lifetime. Just leave it. Maybe your children, they would not be using the dollar. Maybe they will be using crypto. But there are just some things that the world does not change that fast. Like, even when we had a pandemic, we just went right back to our old ways. One would have thought a pandemic would change us. We just went back to wars. We went back to drought, starvation. Like, that's it. Just leave it. There are just some things that are not going to happen in your lifetime. So just deal with what you can see now, please. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bobby, for that answer. I'm going to take the second question. This is from Anonymous. As someone with tech solutions, I have challenges receiving payments with PayPal. Any recommendations around this?
PayPal is not registered in Nigeria. So PayPal, and it's really because of the banks. Let me just be true. It's competition. They don't want that level of competition. And also because Nigeria's compliance, the requirements for compliance for Nigeria, are quite high. I would suggest you use other platforms. There are other alternative platforms that allow you to receive payments. Luckily, with the sale of Paystack to Stripe, Stripe is actually now about to introduce Naira payments and Naira exchanges. I saw the notification on the Stripe platform. So there are a lot of alternatives now. I know Flutterwave has a solution as well for those who want to receive USD payments in Nigeria. So you don't need to use an intermediary. You don't need to use a friend or a brother. You can receive your dollar payments directly in Nigeria. So I would suggest start with those, fintech solutions so that you can, begin to receive your dollar payments directly in Nigeria. And, a lot of people don't know that sometimes just registering a company in another country in the US is also a way to solve some of these problems. Because remember I said, for some of these countries, you just need a tax identification number. And if you go on the IRS website, you will actually be able to get a tax identification number for a business that is registered in the US, even though you're in Nigeria. So there are a lot of, which is why I said talk to a licensed fund manager, because some of this, you're not going to get all of this information from an account officer, in a bank. So if you really are having challenges receiving payments, these are things that your fund manager should be able to, solve for you. There's a question about stable coins. Yes, good news. SEC has licensed 2 cryptocurrency exchanges in Nigeria. So now it's legal to invest in cryptocurrencies. So you don't need to hide your crypto. It's just that you'll be taxed, capital gains tax. Yeah, it's okay for convenience. I'd rather just have my cryptocurrency in the open, so And you pay your capital gains tax again. If that's not something you're familiar with, just Google capital gains tax. But the good news is that SEC has licensed, two cryptocurrency exchanges in Nigeria, so you can now legally trade, cryptocurrencies in Nigeria. I don't want to mention the exchanges because they'll now say Shubomi said, but I'm sure if you Google it, you will find the crypto currency. Just Google it, you'll find the two exchanges that have just been licensed by SEC. Can I transfer euro from a GT Bank account to a Zenith account? Like I said, you need to find the banks that currently allow it, and you're going to pay your 0.525. The policy affects all currencies. As long as it's not Naira, you're going to need to always pay that fee anytime you're doing a transfer. And yes, there are banks in Nigeria that will help you facilitate from one Nigerian bank to another Nigerian. So you need to ask your bank whether they will be able to do that, and just add your 0.525% to the transaction. So someone is asking, do other branches of Nigerian banks in the diaspora? I'm not sure I understand that question, so I'm going to leave that. Maybe Yomi, you can read it and just let me know.
Okay.
So
I think
do you know what the person is trying to say?
I think the person is talking about branches of Nigerian banks in the diaspora. How do they go around these challenges of transferring money from the country back to Nigeria?
Okay, I'm not really quite sure what the question is, but I think you're trying to say, will Nigerian banks who have branches outside of the country have issues with transferring funds back to Nigeria? Again, those are things you're going to need to ask the bank about, because I can't speak about their operations and what agreements they have with correspondent banks and things like that. So really just ask the bank that, oh, you want to do a transfer to Nigeria, how easy is it going to be? And you can even just do a test transfer and see if it actually works. And if it does, then you have your answer. Someone is saying dollar investment I did with one of the investment apps is just crawling. Again, it seems to be a technology issue and specific to that particular investment app. So you need to contact that investment app. It's not a general dollar investment question. For those who invested in the Ghana bonds, and the Ghana bond didn't lose 50% of its value. Let us not exaggerate. It lost some value, but not up to 50%. And they're back to paying coupons. So again, this is what I was saying about Euro bonds, that the government can default, not default because they just delay. Most governments never really default, they just delay the payment. So in Ghana's case, there was a lot of renegotiation, and now Ghana is back to paying. So if you have a Ghana Eurobond, you should have received your coupon payments by now. All the banks have paid the coupons for Ghana Eurobonds, and they even paid an extra, for your consent fee and a number of other things. Someone is asking what Euro bonds earn up to 20%. I'm going to run through because we have limited time. So I'm just going to get a sense of the kind of questions people are asking, and then now do a general response. I think some of the team can also, just answer some of the maybe platform specific questions, while I focus on the general, investing in USD questions.
While we are waiting for Shubomi to give us more answers to your questions, kindly note that we have a survey for any one of us that are currently an active investors with us. We have a members survey that we will appreciate if you can please answer. Your feedback is highly important to us.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get a sense of some of these questions so I can then try to answer at least the main.
While she's still on that, there are a few things you should take note of. At the moment, you can also access a free investment course with us. The link to this free investment course will be put in the chat box below. Please feel free to register for the free investment course. Also, you can also, at the same time, register for a free one-on-one investment session. The link to this one-on-one investment session will also be put in the chat box below. And if you are looking to also have a full and in-depth insight into investment planning, we have an investment planning session that we also coordinate. We can coordinate with you. The link to this is also going to be put in the chat box below. And feel free to also go through the links to our different investment polls, which you can take advantage of, which Shubome has showcased in terms of the minimum entry fees you can invest with and a couple of return on investment you should be expected. The links to all these polls are also going to be put in the chat box below.
Okay, so I've gotten a sense of some of the similar questions, that people are answering. So one of the questions is about access. So how do you access Euro bonds? How do you access ETFs? How do you access dollar funds? Two ways. The first way is to walk into your asset management company. Most banks have asset management companies. Again, do your own research, choose, which asset management company you're interested in doing business with. We are also an asset management company. We have a SEC license. And then you ask, what are the available investments that you have? They will tell you the different investments. They'll tell you the price. They'll tell you the tenor. They'll tell you the minimum amount. I've shared some of ours through our investment community, and I think the links are in the chat. That's usually the starting point. So if you're looking for a Euro bond or you're looking for a dollar fund, the starting point is to have a conversation with a SEC licensed asset management company. If you're looking for an ETF or a stock, like I said, there's several apps in Nigeria right now that some of them are SEC licensed as well. So again, that's always a good due diligence question to ask. Ask about the SEC license behind the company that is running the app. Quite a number of them already have a SEC license, and they offer dollar stocks and dollar ETFs from Nigeria. So with those apps, you can buy your ETFs, buy your USD stocks very seamlessly, very, very simply from Nigeria. So that's the access question in terms of, how do I access a Euro bond, or how do I access an ETF or a dollar stock? The next question is about accounts, setting up whether offshore accounts or if you have existing accounts with platforms like Payoneer, and all of these other platforms that a lot of gig workers, use, or as long as you can receive an international payment, then it's kind of serves as an offshore account. So if it's an account that you've used to receive a dollar payment in the past, then that actually works. But you need to be sure what is the insurance coverage for some of those accounts, because if it's a proper bank, typically there's a deposit insurance company that covers your funds up to I think, depending on which bank. Some banks do $250,000. So there's, I think in Nigeria, I think it's 250. Is it 500,000 Naira or something? Yomi, I don't know, but there's a coverage, and it's not a lot, so you need to be sure that that platform, does it have a deposit bank behind it? Because if it's a registered bank, if it has a registered banking license, then it means that if anything, happens, there's some level of insurance that covers your funds. So that's just a very important, point to note. I've given the steps. You can watch the recording if you want to open a new offshore account or an international account. I've provided some of the steps. And then I think the final question is around the safety of our platform. So again, because we have a SEC license, we have a license to use, so we're very particular about our governance. We're very particular about compliance. For anyone who knows about, the Securities and Exchange Commission, there are a lot of rigorous quarterly reports, that you have to make. You can't just do anyhow, so that's as to the safety of our platform. Because we're regulated and we're licensed, we have very rigorous compliance standards and governance standards. So I hope that has helped in terms of just, I'm going to just take maybe an extra 5 minutes just to see if there's any other question. Yomi, you can also bring any question you think I've not really covered to my attention. For our platform, typically we prefer receiving inflows, and that's because for any Nigerian bank, your cash deposit limit is $10,000. So you can imagine if we have 1,000 people trying to pay cash into our accounts, we're very quickly going to, max out the $10,000 cash. But we do, however, allow Naira transfers. So if you want to do the Naira equivalent, maybe you can't get inflows, you're struggling to get inflows, then we accept, the Naira equivalent, and then we pay you out in USD. So that may be another option for you. Yomi, I'm just going to end here. So in case there's a question you're seeing that you feel
I seem to have a question which I think is quite important. Isaac Okuma is asking about how do I get to seamlessly transfer $50K? And I think you've mentioned that before. And the cost, in terms of cost and the seamless way of transferring. How easy is it for me to terminate, and how long do I wait to get my message money, in quotes? I believe he's trying to know, he has $50,000. How does he invest in Purple pool, and how can he get his return after the end of the investment?
Okay. So it's very simple. So depending, where is the money? That's the starting point. Is the money in Nigeria or is the money outside of Nigeria? Always clarify, because there are different levels of difficulty depending on if the money is coming from a Nigerian bank to another Nigerian bank, or if the money is coming, say, from the US to Nigeria. So I'll explain the two ways you can get it done. So if the money is coming, say, from the US to Nigeria, that's seamless. You're just going to pay your offshore charge, $45. And like I said, depending on your account type, the fee can even be waived, for you. So really, they just get the account, the transfer details, and initiate that transaction. You shouldn't have a problem if you're transferring from outside Nigeria to Nigeria. Now, if you're trying to transfer within Nigeria, that's when the first question is, did the money come in as inflows? So if the money came in as inflows originally, typically you shouldn't have a challenge, doing that transfer, because it came in as inflows. You're not, dollarizing the Nigerian economy. CBN is not going to flag it. So you shouldn't have a problem. And particularly if it's going, say, to a SEC licensed firm in Nigeria, you're not going to have a challenge with that transfer. So depending on how the money came in, but if it came in as cash, that's when maybe you're going to need to do it $10,000 every month, for 5 months, for it, or you're going to need to get someone to exchange it for inflows, in which case the fee for that most times is about 1%, if you want to change cash to inflows. So there are all of these realities. The good news about joining our investment community is that you have access to me on WhatsApp, so I can answer a lot of all these off-the-cuff, questions. And I typically try to answer those questions myself on our investment community. So that's one of the benefits that you get, for joining our investment community. There are also some people who, have Purple investments with us where they have a dedicated fund manager. So there's someone who literally holds their hand and helps them with their investments and things like that. So those are some of the benefits that you have for joining our investment community. And maybe the final points that I will make, like I said, always talk to a licensed fund manager. So even if you walk into your asset management company tomorrow, please don't talk to a customer care official. Ask to speak to a SEC licensed fund manager, because the customer care guys won't even know what you're talking about. So talk to a licensed fund manager. You will find out that the kind of responses you get would mirror some of the conversations I'm having, because they would be able to then, give you expert opinion and expert advice. So Yomi, over to you. Close us out.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shubhomi. It's lovely having you for this webinar. I believe a lot of us have lots of insight into how we can invest, into dollar portfolios, looking at the challenges and the difficulties as well. There are a couple of things you've mentioned, and I think that will resonate, with us as we close this session. You mentioned that we should plan for the next 20 years, which is typically a good way to grow wealth, and also to ensure that you have consistency in your approach to investment. And of course, you also shared the transfer fees, which also open the eyes of a lot of people to know what they should expect when they are doing transfer at this point in Nigeria. Thank you once again. For all the questions that came in that we could not answer, please feel free to drop your questions, by sending us an email at ask@volitioncap.com. Please take note of the email, ask@volitioncap.com. We'll be happy.
And sorry to interject. I've also said for those who join our WhatsApp community, I'll also spend the next 1 or 2 days. So in case there are additional questions that I couldn't respond to here, I'm available on the WhatsApp community. So please, you can send us an email asking for the link. I don't know if they can share it here as well. So maybe the team, you might want to, share the WhatsApp community link here. So I'll spend about 1 or 2 days just, looking through the comments of the WhatsApp community. So if there are specific questions, please, nobody should DM me on WhatsApp. I will block I will block you. Keep your questions in public on the WhatsApp community. So I'm committing to at least spending a day or two. So just answering some questions. So please, I think the team, please share the link. I'm deliberately delaying so that you can share the link to the WhatsApp community, so that way I can answer some of these additional questions that I couldn't answer. So Yomi, please don't close out until they share the link to the WhatsApp community, and then we can close out. Okay.
That's okay. Thank you so much, Chubomi. So we've come to the end of this wonderful webinar session. We want to say a very big thank you to everyone that have been able to join, and of course to our keynote speaker for today for the wonderful delivery in terms of the topic today. Please don't forget to help us fill out the survey at the end of this webinar. There will be a short survey to everyone. We would like to have your feedback about the webinar and all the things you expect us to do in the future. Again, remember, this session is recorded and we will share this at the end of the whole webinar. Thank you once again. As Shubhomi has said, we will keep the webinar open just to ensure that the link to the WhatsApp community is being shared in the chat box, and from there we'll be able to proceed. Thank you once again, and thank you so much for joining. We wish you all the best in the future. Thank you.